Good morning, everyone. What is up? So, I'm going to do a video series here. As much for me as I hope it's for other people. I watch a lot of preparedness channels, survival channels, and gear channels, some gaming channels and comedy channels as well. But over the past few days, I've really been thinking, I've been digging deep into some subjects, and something hit me, and I took down some notes. What are you preparing for? So I'm asking you that question, but I'm also asking myself. It's a very broad question. I grew up in central Oklahoma. Sorry for the audio and video on this iPad stuff. Grew up on a 45-acre Appaloosa horse ranch until I was 14-ish years old. Then I moved with my mom to the city, where I finished out all of my teenage years into my adulthood, whatever you want to call it. What I didn't realize growing up on that horse ranch was how much I was being trained preparedness but didn't know it. I've only really been into a lot of gear and stuff for the later portion of my adult life. But it was always there, just under the surface. And I didn't realize that until recently, that growing up on that ranch, I didn't realize that we were being prepared because it was just our way of life. We were preparing for our major threat, which is weather. Tornadoes, ice storms, snowstorms. Oklahoma gets some of the most violent weather in the central U.S. because of where it's located. It gets every weather pattern, from the north, from the south, from the east, from the west. So no matter which way a storm blows in on any coastline or from the north, chances are it's going to hit Oklahoma in some capacity. Now, I'm not saying that other places don't have it way worse. They do. Look at New York just here a few days ago. But we were preparing for weather, and primarily power outage, because power outage, typically speaking, if you live in a suburb somewhere and you lose power, you still have water. You may still have fuel, gas, propane, well, if you're in a suburb, you're going to have natural gas, but chances are you're still going to have water, because it probably didn't affect the entire city. It may have, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's isolated to a single neighborhood. On the ranch, we were 30, 45 minutes from the nearest city. Hell, we were 15 or 20 minutes from the nearest grocery store. So if we lost power, we were on a well system. You had a matter of seconds before you had no water, because once the pressure tank bled off, that was it. So anytime anything big was going to happen was forecasted. My grandmother used to be able to get Gatorade. And when you think Gatorade, don't think the squeeze bottle. Think the really stiff, rigid, what I call the barrel bottles. You used to be able to get those, but in a much larger size, in a gallon size. And I don't think you can anymore. I could be wrong. Very thick walled, very clear plastic, had a carry handle. They were awesome. We drank a lot of Gatorade. So we would save those bottles along with like milk jug bottles that my grandmother would wash these out. We shared a 5-acre tract with my grandparents, and then the rest of it was all for horses and stuff like that. So once we knew it was happening, yes, the storm's coming, we would fill up those jugs. Sometimes, I believe there was even a time whenever we filled up the bathtub and lined the jugs along the front of the tub. But if nothing else, We filled those up, lined them in front of the tub, had them on kitchen counters, whatever. Got out the hurricane lamps. If you don't know what that is, look it up. It's an oil lamp. Candles, so on and so forth. Now, the cool thing was we were on propane. So even though the heaters wouldn't work, because your heater still requires electricity to operate, even if you have gas or propane, just so you know, that was a big myth for a long time. We had propane kitchen stoves. So we could always fire those burners up, build up a lot of heat, at least in the central portion. The rest of it, you dressed accordingly. I mean, that was it. We would do that, and then we would make it through the storm. You know, I remember we lost power for a week. Might have been more than that. In the 80s, and we just sat around and played cards by candlelight. You know, we had water because we'd stored water. We had food because all of us, and I didn't realize this at the time, but my parents and my grandparents, they were being prepared. So we always had an entire cabinet that was brimful of canned goods. You know, we had a back porch that was kind of enclosed at our house, so anything that needed refrigeration that could freeze and not ruin, we would just stick out there. I mean, it's the middle of winter. In the summer, you know, you just had to hope they got the power back on because it was way too hot and humid to put anything outside, so we just didn't open the refrigerator unless it was absolutely necessary. Now, granted, back then, we didn't have frost-free refrigerators, so the freezer usually had a pretty layer of ice in it, so you could move stuff up into the freezer as their temperature rose. But so what are you prepping for? What are you preparing for? Zombie apocalypse? I almost feel like we're there now. Because every single person's walking around like this all day long on their phone, driving like this all the time on their phone. Zombies. Prepping for the big one. Prepping for civil unrest, societal downfall. All good things to prepare for. But don't miss all the stuff in between. You can have ammunition piled to the rafters. You don't have any food and water. You don't have a means of staying warm. You don't have a means of staying cool. I live in the desert now. Staying cool is a very high priority. If you don't have that kind of stuff, it's not going to matter for very long. You might be able to take on an entire army, just you and your buddies held up in your home. You can't eat. If you have food, do you have a means of cooking it? See the other video that I just posted. Emergency cook sets. You can have a cook set for 30, 40 bucks. And I know, I can already hear it. But there's so much food you can eat. It's ready to eat right out of the package. You're absolutely correct. There is. There's a ton of it. Most canned goods are ready to eat right out of the can. And in a survival situation, absolutely. But if we're talking you and your family, and it's going to be a few days or a few weeks, having a nice cooked meal is going to be highly beneficial, both for morale and your health. Let's say your water supply starts running low, but there's a body of water not that far from you. It's great. Do you have a means of purifying that water? Do you have a means of boiling that water? I mean, if the gas is still on, then you have a means right there, and that's great. But you can't hang your hat on your fuel running to your home to still be available. You know, what if the power outage, what if the natural disaster affects a larger scale and it takes out that supplying agency's ability to get you water and fuel. What are you prepping for? You really got to think about that, and I've really been thinking about that over the past few days, hard and heavy. That's why I started taking notes. Do you have preparedness stuff at work? Do you have preparedness stuff that you carry with you? Do you have it in your car? Not that long ago, a whole lot of people got stuck on a section of highway. Yeah. So then what? All your preparedness items are at home. You're stuck in your vehicle for hours, hours, and hours. You have stuff you can snack on? Because you don't really want to eat, because eating leads to, well, restroom breaks and whatnot. Speaking of that, well, I'm just not going to eat. Okay, that's good. That's a good plan. Coming from someone who's moved across the country, I think 4 times now, trust me, I snack very lightly. However, the human body under stress sometimes decides, you know what? I'm going to go right now. Do you have a means of handling that? Stuck in a line of a few hundred people on the highway? Well, I'll just exit the highway and find a different way. Okay? I know that where I'm at and a lot of other places that I've been to, that ain't an option. I don't care what kind of vehicle you have, you're not exiting the highway and going around. You are stuck right where you are, because it's either vertical, or meaning up, or it is drop off, meaning down, and your vehicle is not going to get you out of there. Now, do you need to have a prepper's pantry in the back of your ride? No. I mean, if you can, then great, awesome. If you do, share pictures. But you need to have some basic stuff. So, it's going to be a little series. What are you prepping for? Stay tuned for that. I'm hoping it can bring some good discussion. I'm hoping someone can get some use out of these videos. I know it's helping me work through stuff in my head. So, till next time, guys. Take care.